He says so. Welcome, everyone, to the January 8th Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting. First up is introductions and administrative remarks, but for introductions to kick off 2019, first of all, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome, and want to welcome back our student representative, Abby. Thank you for being here. Amy McNally was unable to make it today. I think Julia will be along probably momentarily. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you.
Dr. Babson, Mr. Batchelor, and last but not least, our administrative liaison, Mr. Petiti. Is that a good segue into some administrative remarks for the evening?
Yes. A few this evening. So you'll see that there's a new a piece of material that is with the packet. It's the Delaware County United for Education agenda. It's been added to our list of materials. It came in a little late, so that's why it's here now. This is an event that is in conjunction with the PA Schools Work initiative, which we all heard about at our meeting in December. And I wanted the community and the public to be aware of this agenda. This is all of Delaware County coming together to support this initiative and to go over, how to mobilize neighbors, how to leverage the media, et cetera. So just to draw that to your attention, that's in your packet.
Excuse me, just for clarification, sure. The February 2nd event, it wasn't in our packets. It actually was emailed.
I'm sorry,
right.
I mean like the packet you have in front of you at this moment. It should be in, where is it?
I'm going to ask if it's okay. Mr. Petiti, would you mind flipping us one of those packets? Because I don't think either of my compatriots here have one. Thank you so much. And we are talking about a very important event, so we don't want to miss that. Thank you.
So you can locate that in this updated packet that was included today. It's, I think, your third page in this packet. So there's this item. Secondly, I wanted to mention that Mr. Babson will be representing the district at the NSBA Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. at the end of January. And one of the things he'll be doing while he's there is meeting with Mary Gay Scanlon, our congressperson, along with other Delaware County school board members in a meeting organized by Haverford School Board President Larry Feinberg. So that's exciting that we'll be able to sit down with Representative Scanlon. We have new members of the House and Senate were sworn in January 1st, for your information. The House and Senate legislative sessions begin January 15th, and budget hearings will take place from February 11th to March 7th. The House Education Committee will be chaired by Representative Kurt Sani, who's out of Erie, and he is replacing David Hinkernell. And we don't know yet who is chairing the Senate Education Committee, but we do know that there'll be a new chair because Representative Eichelberger is retiring. So we'll have a new representative there. Keep our ears to the street on who's that going to be. And as you probably all know, the PA General Assembly went through a major transformation with 20% of its members taking office for the first time. 43 new representatives took the oath in the State House of Reps, and 7 new senators took the oath in the Senate. That's 50 freshmen out of a legislative body of 253 members. So it's a lot of new faces. And that's my administrative remarks today.
Terrific. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about Mr. Petiti's remarks? No? Okay. Well, then let's open up for public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Good evening, Mrs. Spurtle.
Good evening. Happy New Year. Cindy Spurtle, Wayne.
Thank you.
I haven't signed in yet, but I will. My first question I've asked before, and I'll ask it again, and that's on the answers to the questions, the timing requests that these were put out sometime after 3 o'clock. We checked at 3 and they weren't up yet. And for a 5 o'clock meeting, that's rather close to get answers to the questions that we asked in the prior month. So once again, a request that administration or staff, in conjunction with the board, if they talk with the board before posting these, to try and do that earlier. The other is that, once again, to state, as I have in the past at business meetings, the public is asked to talk directly to the board and not to the administration or staff members. But all questions, once again, the first 4 questions for government relations and communications are questions to be answered by the board, and once again, there is no answer to the questions. And that's been the pattern. So without any review of the questions, the board, I guess, has no idea that there are questions directed to them with answers specifically needed from them are not being answered. I was here for for last month's meeting and listened to the young woman who was here talking about the PA schools work. And on one of the handouts, there's on page 4, it talks about, it gives us a Radnor Township School District fact sheet, which to me raised a lot of questions. And maybe a further explanation whether it would have to come from the individual who was here before, if the board might be able to answer. And the first statement says that here is what has changed for the district since 2011, when the state dramatically reduced education funding. And the first 2 numbers show an increase in funding of $4 million, slightly over, both from the state and from local funding. So that's a question. If it's been reduced, why do the first 2 numbers show an increase? And then there are some percentages, an increase in expenditures, which has been mentioned before, for special education, a change in state revenue dedicated to special education, slightly increased, and then a change in payments to charter schools. Now, all of these say change in expenditures. It shows a positive, but are the increases or decreases? It may be positive over this period of time. So I guess the one question would be, where were these statistics pulled from in the Radnor records to put these numbers into their study? The other question I had was under performance students on a grade level. What do those percentages mean? Because math at 63%, that doesn't look like a good percentage of anything. Thank you.
We have that on our agenda to talk a little bit more about the PA Schools Works campaign, and some of your questions will likely be answered there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comment?
I also want to quickly interject that Ms. Spur reminded me to mention that there was a delay today in the posting of the answers to the questions, and we would typically have it up by 12, but today there was a delay. Just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Sherry. I'm sorry.
Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Newtown Square. It would seem reasonable, since it was the board and administration that indicated to the public that answers would be up by noon, every effort would be made, that if that is not a reasonable time period, that the administration posts something online stating that they're not ready to be posted, so look back again at 3 o'clock. Or would the board expect the public to be checking every few minutes to see when that's going to happen? I mean, there should be some respect for the time that the public puts in. Related to the answers to questions, which seemed always dysfunctional to me anyway, so. There also were no December 11th minutes published online for this meeting, so there was no opportunity to review the minutes before we arrived tonight. Some of my questions from before still stand, which have not received answers from the board. Ms. Birtle kind of mentioned that questions that apparently are capable of being answered by the administration without board involvement are answered, and other questions remain unanswered. Related to goals, does a list of activities and things you're doing constitute proof of achieving goals? Or should goals be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-sensitive? Regarding website management and maintenance, that's on tonight's agendas, numbers are relevant when they are compared with other data. So why not compare October 2018 numbers with previous months or years? Or try to develop a trend line related to the website. If you're increasing your viewership, then it would be interesting to see that in a trend line. My final question, really, I meant to say number one, was something really related to communication, and that is, are all the rumors that are circulating about cyberbullying in the middle school accurate? If cyberbullying is indeed an issue, wouldn't it be better to have it discussed in public rather than sweeping it under the rug or pretending nothing's wrong? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sherry. Any other public comment? Good evening, Dr. Winters.
Good evening. I was just wanting to follow up on the PA Schools Work project. I assume that's open to the public, and I just thought that maybe that would be something that might be mentioned if it's open to the public or just limited to school board members. Thank you.
Yes, all the details are forthcoming momentarily. I made myself a note to check, Patty. Any emailed public comment? I know that's...
There are, but I think we're going to save those for the board meeting, because I think they're more applicable for a board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, then with that, we have the minutes in our packet, so I'm asking if everybody's ready to approve last month's meeting minutes. Have you looked them over and good to go? Okay, terrific. So consider the minutes approved from last month. Sure. Would you like to, okay, so Mrs. Calderoni is saying that the minutes were posted but not in the right place. So that's where the public had trouble finding them. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, then let's move into agenda item, the 4.1, which is our 2017-18 goals review and the finalization of our goals for this year. And I know that those last year's goals have been on a couple of past agendas, but given that we have two new members of our committee, Mrs. Bonenberger and Dr. Babson, we thought it would be a good idea to review what our goals were last year and what we did to achieve those goals so that they could chew on that before we approve the 2019 proposed goals. So, Mr. Petiti, would you like to walk us through that?
So if we look at the second slide here, we can see the 17-18 goals that were in place. And we went over these over the past couple months, but again, for Dr. Babson, these were the goals we addressed last year, and we were successful in meeting the goals, and we have compiled the evidence of that success here. I won't, again, go through it for a fourth time or a third time, but for your reference, here is all the bullet points of how we reached those objectives, and that leads us into the creation of our 2019 goals. And those 2019 goals, you'll notice that the first two are really carried over from the past year, because that's kind of our mandate as this committee every year, is to monitor, evaluate, and act upon, when necessary, evolving state and federal education legislation that could impact the 4 strategic goal areas of our comprehensive plan. There's a link there for access to that plan, so for ease of access. Our second goal would be to work with our community at large and our fellow school districts to raise awareness and generate additional support of our public education advocacy work. And then you'll see that last goal is new. That's what we started to create last meeting, and we fleshed it out prior to this meeting, and that's what we're going with, is this last goal, and I'll read it aloud, is that the Government Relations and Communications Committee will support the RTSD Communication Department's ongoing comprehensive evaluation and improvement of RTSD video services that began in 2018, including but not limited to the RTSD YouTube channel and RTSD television station, student-produced videos for online and television, video production, program development, and staffing. The department will also provide guidance for related high school curriculum development as requested. I would like to talk a little bit more about that goal because, as you see, it did begin January 18th. So we've been working diligently with the high school studios since that point to improve the offerings. It's important to note that Nikki Crone, who is the TV director, and this might be redundant for some of you, but for you, Dr. Babson, maybe not, and for others who might not be aware, she was moved from the high school's kind of supervision as a principal underneath the communications department starting this summer. So that allowed us to really be more strategic with the content that we're creating on a district-wide level. It also allowed us to promote and professionalize the studio and the TV station a little bit by creating a website, which we've done, and I'd be happy to show it to you, creating a website for the TV station, so you can see it here on the screen. This website gives you a programming schedule. You can easily click on this view all and see all of the programming that's going to be on the television station. This was something that was really requested by a lot of people who were wondering, well, what's on when. Now there's a web page that specifically goes over those items, and that's going to be continually updated by Ms. Crone. On that website, there's also an area where we focus on our YouTube station, which, again, for those that might not be aware, the district at large created the YouTube channel in August. That is a channel that's in addition to our student-produced our YouTube channel, which is called RAD TV, which has been around since 2007. So we have 2 now YouTube channels that we're managing, and we're hoping to bring more attention to the district channel by highlighting some of the things that are happening on that channel on this page. So I did want to let the committee and the public see that there is a repository of sorts for information about the TV station, and that's channel 8 on Comcast and Verizon 31. Unfortunately, we don't have HD capabilities as yet, and that's part of our work with Comcast to hopefully get us to a point where we can have HD and we can have on demand and we can have a guide in place so you could see on the TV itself what's on the educational channel. Currently, you can't, and that's just the nature of our arrangement with Comcast and what they're offering us. So that is why we've created this page so you can have a schedule somewhere where you can see what's on. Lastly, we are already in the middle of working to improve the curriculum over at the TV studio, the TV production classes. Ms. Latour, assistant principal at the high school, has really taken the lead on the school level of supporting, in an administrative sense, the TV studio and has developed resources for the teachers there, including annual calendar, digital resources, learning objectives, a curriculum map. So many resources that she's put into 365 for the Office 365 for the teachers to use to enhance the TV production class, and we hope to get them to a point where they're creating very professional videos that we can use on the television station as well as YouTube. So we're making great progress, and I think that having a goal to continue that progress is a smart move on our behalf, because I think we're actually well on our way to really get where we want to be with the channel. So those are the 3 goals. Does anyone have any, questions or comments about those goals before we move on to the next part of the presentation?
I have a question. The website that is used for all the public comments that everyone was addressing, is that not considered to be our goal anymore? Is that because I don't mean to be speaking out of turn, but it seems that people are having problems with the public comments, so because we're the communications committee, should we add that to the goals?
I think that it's kind of an ongoing project that all the administration, not just the communications department, but all of us as an administration are tackling. Okay. And so I don't know if it would be appropriate to have it as our sole goal for GRCC, but we do listen to the community and the public's feedback on that, and I think we all are going to take that into consideration.
But just jumping back, because your point is well, your point is well taken. Since we are the communication committee, I think we do need to, and I can't speak for all the committees, but I think we do need to look at whether we can make the answers a little quicker than 12 o'clock the day of the meeting, the next meeting. I mean, asking a question and waiting for a month to get an answer is, in my opinion, just my opinion, totally unacceptable. if we're trying to communicate back and forth with our community members. I fail to see how we can sit up here and think that we're doing a decent job as a communication committee if we're not communicating it. So I have an issue with that, and I would not mind bringing that as a discussion point. So thank you for bringing that up.
And, you know, our process has not changed. You know, any questions that can be answered during a meeting can be answered during a meeting by a board member or administrator when there's public comment. If there isn't an answer to that question. So if it's something that someone brings up public comment and it's going to be addressed on the agenda, I think there was an example of that tonight, where there was a question where the chair acknowledged that, you know, that topic's going to be covered tonight. We think we'll answer that question tonight. So whenever questions can be answered because they're going to be on the agenda, I think administrators and the board try to answer those questions. If there's things that take time for people to research because they don't have an answer tonight, then they respond by the following month with those answers. And our previous process had been we were responding during administrative remarks, and we were praised by people in the public and board that they were getting very thorough answers the following month during administrative remarks. The only thing that has changed is that those, instead of waiting for the administrative remarks at the beginning of the meeting, what has changed is that answers are being posted earlier now at trying for noon. Today there wasn't, but trying for noon, written answers instead of having to wait for just the verbal answers. So you know, it does puzzle me, Mr. Madden, it puzzles me that when they were verbally given administrative comments a month later, it seemed to all be working very well. So we're happy to go back to that. Now that they're written and provided earlier, there seems to be more of a problem with it.
Well, I'm not saying that there's more of a problem with it or there's not. What I'm saying is I'm not comfortable with saying that we're engaged in public participation when someone asks me a question and they get an answer a month later. If I know the answer, and maybe it's I'll take responsibility for not answering the questions that were put towards the board, and I'll try to get it in time to answer those questions today, once we get through all this. So maybe it's just the way I have been approaching it that I'm not satisfied with. Okay, if the public's satisfied with the way things were going in the past, and we just have to make sure that they're uploaded, then that's fine. But I think it's worth a conversation.
Yeah, I think
That's all.
I think
I'm
certain
happy to have a
conversation is
conversation.
good, but I think we have to
Move this
review.
one. we gotta.
You got to decide. I mean, you may get questions for things that A, you don't know an answer to, or B, that aren't on the agenda for that evening. And just like this is now
Right.
taking up time at our meeting here. But no, every effort, and believe me, if there's anyone in our public who has questions, they can always feel free to reach out to an administrator at any time, you know, for those. And we're happy to also, you know, connect offline with someone who has a question. So, I mean, we're very, I think the administrative team is very accessible in that way.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for that. I think we're still in the goals discussion, because what we'd like to do, since this has been on our agenda for a number of months now, is to finalize this. And Dr. Babson, for your benefit, at the last meeting, the first two goals were sort of approved by the committee, but we certainly don't want to forego your vote now that you're a full-fledged member. And the third one was quasi-approved. It just needed some wordsmithing, and Mr. Petiti has come back to us with that wordsmithing. I do want to add, before you give us your blessing or not, that one thing about the third goal is that goal, I think, was informed very much by public input, because this goal manifested itself from feedback across all communication surveys that Mr. Petiti administered last year to students, staff, families, and the community at large. So this is very much a response to public input, and that's why this video project has been going on for some time, and the finalization of it is one of our goals for this current year as a committee. So,
And I could just add, yeah, sure, thank you, Ms. Goldman. I did want to, I appreciate you adding that. I also wanted to mention, now that I was thinking about it, that although it doesn't explicitly state this in the goal, we did start live streaming, as you all may know, to YouTube, these committee meetings in August. And part of this goal is going to be looking at live streaming into the future, because it's just going to increase in demand in terms of people expecting perhaps events to be live streamed, musicals to be live streamed, sporting events to be live streamed. And what are the technical and human manpower we would need to do something like that if we were going to move in that direction? But it is something that we want to make sure that we are looking at and investigating, you know, as technology improves and as we move forward with the video demand in the district and elsewhere.
I would also like to make a nod to all of the programming that you have put up on the website in response to public participation. There were many occasions where we were asked about where's the programming, what's the programming schedule, and I think what you've done to illustrate that in a dedicated place on our website is terrific, and I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes answers to public participation come in all different forms, and that is, I think, a really tangible response to what we were hearing was requested by members of our community, not just at our board meetings, but everywhere. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I know you have something to
One
say,
quick
and I want
question for
to
Michael.
ask Dr. Babson, too, what he
This
thinks.
is just
Yes.
related to what
Yeah.
Mike was saying. Can we tell how many people are streaming?
We can.
Okay.
We could tell, you know, in real time.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We're going viral. That's
I
our
didn't
goal. Can
ask
we go
how many,
viral?
please.
Want to know right now?
I don't want to know right now, no.
People start Twitch streaming.
Let me pull it up on this
Keep
computer.
it clean.
How many people are joining us now?
Oh, we are getting some statistics.
Let's see.
What's the over-under?
I know what the actual is.
3? Okay.
One is upstairs.
Now I just gotta hope this actually works.
Are the members of the public helping us out with the streaming numbers? Are you guys?
At least 2 that I know of.
Get our phones.
Yeah.
3.
3? Okay. So let's try to up the streaming following there.
3.
There's 3.
3. Okay. So Dr. Babson, Abby, everybody, are we ready to finalize, crystallize these 2019 GRCC goals at this point and kick off the new year with our work defined and cut out for us? What would you say?
I think it's great. I do have one response in 10 parts. Just kidding. No, everything's great. And I especially appreciate the link to the curriculum development as well. I think that's great.
You mean the
It's-
comprehensive plan?
Yeah,
Okay.
it includes a lot in that
Okay.
goal. It's great.
Okay, terrific. Abby, are you comfortable with our goals for the year? And Mr. Madden, what do you think?
I'm very comfortable with our goals. I think we have to make sure that people realize that they're not IEP goals, because that was something that I had to get over as a board member and as a special education person. You do want to have things that are in there that you can view, that you can measure, that you can do this and that. These do seem vague, okay, but they're purposeful. And we are going to attach things that we're going to do to make these things happen. So we don't really know what they're going to be, what we're going to be doing exactly. Some of the stuff we do know. But these are goals for us to reach. And we're not being graded on them, or we're not being, it's an overall type of an approach rather than a special education approach to goal setting.
It's also, legislation is so fluid. We're really beholden in what we can achieve to the government. And
Right. It's like-
depending on what kind of activity they're up to really informs how engaged we will be. So I think that's kind of, yeah. Okay. So let's say these are good to go. We can move this off our agenda going forward and post them actually on our committee page, wherever that resides, and refer back to them. And also, Mr. Petiti will give us updates throughout the course of the year on how we're doing with achieving these goals.
Very good.
Okay. So let's move on to item 4.2, the follow-up on the PA Schools Work Campaign. And there's a slash because we are also connecting it to a new event that's evolved from last month, which is will be at the DCIU on February 2nd. Do you want to walk us through that, or would you prefer?
You seem
If I
to
wouldn't mind?
be
Okay.
pretty versed in this, yes.
Okay, so as many of you know, Dr. Babson wasn't here, but we had a presentation from one of the sponsoring organizations of PA Schools Work, that organization was PCCY, Public Citizens for Children and Youth, last month. And unfortunately, her jump drive wasn't working at the time. You have now seen what was on her jump drive. And there is a page in that presentation that I would agree, because I spent some time on the phone with her this week, or yesterday, whatever it was, I'm losing track of the days, asking her to walk me through what these numbers are. And she agreed that they were confusing, so I'm going to do my best, not being the actual representative, to walk you through a little bit of what those numbers on that fact sheet mean. They have made this fact sheet specific to every single school district in the state, and this is the one specific to Radnor. So what they were trying to illustrate, and they're going to revamp this actually for the event at the DCIU on February 2nd, based on some of this feedback, is that in those first two boxes, what they're trying to, the first two orange boxes, what they're trying to illustrate is that the $4,030,816 represents what money has been generated locally through tax increases here in our district. Clearly, that's not representative of the complete local revenue that we've raised since 2011. It's only the money adjusted for inflation that has come through tax increases. And what the other box represents is the money that has come to us, in additional money that has come to us from the state and federal government. And the point is that the 50-50 contributions are not what either the state or the federal government had initially committed in terms of funding public education. If the state and the federal government had funded public education to the extent that they had promised, there would be a much greater disparity in these numbers. The $4 million on the left-hand side would be lower. We would not have had to generate so much money locally in order to fund our schools. And the box on the right-hand side would have been much higher because they would have contributed more to us since 2011. These boxes are going to be revamped to reflect that the next time you see this at the February 2nd event, which, by the way, we will speak to, but is going to be a more local launch of this whole PA Schools Work campaign on behalf of Delaware County. So that's what those two boxes represent in a very general way. I hope, does that clear that up a little bit for everybody so you understand what those two boxes are? What they're trying to illustrate was not really done all that effectively, but that's essentially what that talks about. In addition, the blue box underneath shows at 31% the change in expenditures for us in special education since 2011. Our expenditures towards special education have increased 31%. And conversely, the state has only raised its allocation for special education to us by 6%. That is also a really inverse relationship. Both the federal government and the state had initially committed to funding special education at much higher levels than what these two percentages represent. And so again, these numbers are almost inverse and should be reversed. We should not have to have spent as much of our local money on special education if we had been funded to a greater extent and by the state and they had lived up to that commitment. All of this information is foundational to the essence of the PA Schools Work campaign, which is to say, hello, state, you have not adequately funded public education and lived up to the commitments and have put this undue burden on us as districts to collect this money locally as opposed to getting allocations from the state. So I hope that that makes it a little bit clearer. I want to welcome Mrs. Bonenberger to the committee. Hello, good evening.
Sorry.
That's no problem.
So you're on a slide, actually, I had a question about the child poverty rate. Is that current? Is that, because at the top of it says, here's the difference, what has changed since 2011.
We're going to get to that because I have notes,
Okay,
as
I'll
you
be
can
quiet.
see, all over the page. It was very unclear, and I spent some time with Mrs. Smith on the phone trying to work through this, and this is going to be revamped. So I'm going to do my amateur best to try to describe it. As we move down, The number of students, 3,751. That is a current number. Actually, that's a number, I think, from the 2016-17 school year. Performance, where it says students on grade level, those numbers were taken from the 2016-17 eighth grade PSSA scores. And essentially what you'll see if you were to hold this chart side by side with those from other school districts across Pennsylvania, it would pretty readily establish that those districts that have more resources and are better funded end up having better performance on these assessments. So that, again, that's not really that clearly illustrated on the sheet. I gave them that feedback, and they're going to revamp that so that that information is clear, including citing where that data is coming from. The child poverty rate, again, I believe that's the 2016-17 census data. And you can see our particular school district has a 7% child poverty rate versus statewide is 18%. And again, they're trying to correlate poverty with performance. I don't think they did it all that clearly, quite frankly, shared that with them. But if you were to take these fact sheets for districts all across the state and compare a more economically challenged school district with a more affluent one, relatively speaking, you would see those correlations, but I think you have to derive too much on your own. It should be more clearly stated. Julia, does that help a little bit with that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So
It's a shame, because otherwise, it's a beautiful infographic, it really works, but.
yes, yes. So we are absolutely going to, oh, and by the way, the PSSA scores are those students who scored proficient and advanced combined. That's what the 83% and the 63% represent. So it's missing, I think it was done through a combination of sources. It was done through the Census Bureau, it was done through the Education Law Center, and it was done by public records that, tax records that the district actually puts out there. So the sources need to be clear, the connections need to be clear, and when we get to the February 2nd event, I've been assured that we will see the takeaway messages much more vividly than we do in this particular chart. So I hope that that's helpful, and I'm sorry that that was not as clear as it could have been.
Thank you. I'm wondering if when we do get that more detailed version, could we make an addendum and swap it out or something in our, because it is misrepresenting to a large degree, or at least just kind of confusing.
Okay.
And I'd hate to have that out there publicly if it's not as clear.
Right.
Good idea. Absolutely. I will, as soon as she has it ready. I don't know, she has to get these resources. It's not like she had it at her fingertips, because I was asking her the other night, so what's the real, and she has to go and consult with the sources and get it all back. But as soon as it's ready, it's all ours.
Now, just to
yes.
look at the 63 that one of our public commenters commented upon, so we can bring that to the curriculum, and that's not an impressive number. So we want to see how we're doing now, because this was 2 years ago, possibly.
16, 17, I think.
16, 17, 17, 18. Yeah. So maybe we have improved, but we'll see what we're doing with that.
Now, the one thing I do want to mention is, remember, when they changed the PSSA, the math scores took a hit. Remember, they revamped the PSSA, and I'm wondering if that is lower because that year, across the board, the math scores drop. So we have some digging to do.
We will research and get an
Yes.
answer on that.
Yes. So based on that, I hope that that clears up some of the questions that came up in public and on the committee. I would like to segue into the DCIU event and give you a little background on that. Mr. Madden was with me when this came up. But PA Schools Work is a huge initiative sponsored by a number of community organizations this year, and this group is going to be lobbying and is counting on all of us who care about public education to lobby with them for increased funding for public education, special education, and career and technical education, especially as the state heads into budget season and deliberations right now. So rather than task each individual school district with carrying out what you see in your packet or a series of different action items, we thought that it would be more efficient and effective if we got together as a county and did it. So on February 2nd, as this came out of the meeting last month of the Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council, which both Mr. Madden and I attended, the school districts who were represented there from Delaware County said, why don't we all get together and work with PA Schools Work to try to bring in as many members of Delaware County across all stakeholder groups, parents, students, taxpayers, educators, whoever cares about public education. Please join us at the DCIU on Saturday, February 2nd from 9 to noon, where PCCY and others will be representing the whole essence of the PA Schools Work campaign, and will ask us to roll up our sleeves and get together and to begin our advocacy journey to raise money, to lobby the state and our legislators and our governor to provide even more money for public education. So that's the essence of what's happening, and Abby and committee and public, we hope you'll all consider joining us at that session on February 2nd at the DCIU. And what you see in your updated packets here is a rough outline of what that event will look like. There's more information that's to come tomorrow when we have our Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council meeting, because the PCCY representatives will be coming back to flesh out these details with the School Board's Legislative Council. But just so you get a sense of what is going to happen on Saturday, take a look, and we hope that you'll spread the word and join us. And by the way, if anybody wants to get up at 7:30 in the morning and join us for the Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council meeting, we certainly would love to have you. There will be pastries and coffee to try to entice you. And they're now going to be providing live video conferencing. Yeah, so if you know how to use Zoom, there's a way to join us either by phone or video conference. So if you don't have anything better to do from 7:30 to 9 tomorrow morning, please consider joining us, because they want all the feedback they can possibly get before this campaign rolls out on February 2nd. With that said, does anybody have any questions, comments, suggestions about this?
Well, I would just like to state that I actually have worked with PCCY, worked and went to Harrisburg with them and advocated with them, with the legislators in the past. So I've already have a relationship with them. I'm very impressed that they have a powerful network in place. And now that we have a mission, and it's their mission, and we're supporting them, and I'd like to see as many people as possible to come out to the February event at the DCIU.
Great.
February 2nd.
Thank you. Julia, any?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Abby? Dr. Batson?
We'll see. 7:30,
No, that's, February 2nd is 9,
Right.
tomorrow 7:30. You get a pass
Right, no,
tomorrow
no,
for
yeah.
7:30.
Yeah,
But
we'll see, yeah.
February 2nd at 9?
Sure, yes,
Bring
yes.
your children.
Yeah.
Children are welcome. So that is essentially our announcement, because we won't be meeting again before that event takes place. So just wanted to review that. Okay. Last item, I believe, on our agenda for this evening is an update on the website management and maintenance project that Mr. Petiti has been up to.
Thank you. To give some, I guess, a sense of context around our website, you'll see this relevant website data here. And what this means is site editors. That means people who can log into our website and make changes to the content. So, can add things or remove things. Active web pages means web pages that the public can access via the menus on the website. That does not include the thousands of web pages that are active but hidden from website navigation. Okay? And it doesn't include the thousands of web pages that are inactive generally. So you have 3 tiers of web content. Pages that people can easily navigate to on a web and through menus. Pages that you'd have to kind of know the link or search for it. They're still active, but they're just not anywhere that are as easily navigable. And then there are pages that are inactive behind the scenes that have content associated with them but had not been deleted because potentially that content could need to be used by a teacher another year, or we don't want to get rid of it. We're not sure if it's time to delete that yet. I say all of that because it gives you a sense of just how many pieces of content there are in varying degrees on our website. So the page views, the reason why we have yet to do this linear or this time model of seeing how the views may have changed is because these page views come from a new service that we just instituted called Moncito, which I'll talk about in a minute, that does analytics for our site. We were using Google Analytics before, but technical things have happened and we can no longer use them for our site. So we are able to look at the past couple months, and I just wanted to give people a frame of reference about how many page views we have. So page views is basically any time a web page has been viewed across the website, and that could mean by multiple people or by one person. So it's not unique, it's just generally. And the same thing goes with the website visits. So that's just one person or the same person or multiple people, how many times they came to the site in October. So again, just to kind of give you an idea of most recent data on our website traffic. I say all this because I have this analogy here of apples. I think it's easy maybe for people to kind of get an image in their head of apples as the content of our website. And imagine, you know, all of these apples in a pile, and someone has to look through them to make sure they're all the same color, none of them have dents, none of them have scratches, none of them are rotten, etc. Think of that as the ensuring website accessibility, addressing and correcting misspellings and broken links, and ensuring content remains current. So to keep an image in your head of a big pile of apples that someone has to look through to make sure they can move them to a place where they're edible and usable. Okay, so those are kind of the three main tasks of whomever manages our site, is to do all of that. So what steps have been taken so far to keep up with accessibility on the site and to make sure that our content is up to date and accurate? Well, you can see the list here. The accessibility topic we've talked about before, that essentially means that as a public entity, by law, we are required to make every piece of content on our website viewable to those that might be blind, so it has to be readable by a screen reader. It's a level AA compliance. I don't want to get into, again, the weeds here, but there are certain things that need to be on our website and functional for all people who come to visit. And we've been kind of going through our site since September 2016 or so to try to get it to a place so that by the end of this year, it's fully accessible across all of those pages. So what we've instituted recently in August to help us do that, and has been really, really valuable, is a service called Moncito. Moncito is what they call a website governance software. So imagine a service that looks through all those apples for you, that says, we're gonna look through all of them, we're gonna make sure that we pinpoint the misspellings, we pinpoint all the broken links, all the other accessibility issues, we tell you where they are, and then you can go in and fix them. The operative part of that scenario is that they don't fix them for us. So Moncito will say, here's a potential misspelling. You have to check to see if it's actually misspelled, because it could be a proper name, such as Petiti. It could be an acronym that they're claiming as a misspelling. It could be all sorts of different things that are misspellings. So we have to go in and make sure and say, this isn't misspelling, this is a person's name. You cannot check this the next time you scan our site. So you can see this one graphic here on the left-hand side for Moncito. You can see that as of December 10th, there were approximately 5,708 pages with accessibility or quality assurance issues, meaning there was something on these web pages was either a broken link, a misspelling, or it wasn't accessible to people with disabilities.
Scanned content, how do they quantify that?
So we have 10,000. We have up to 10,000 pages per our agreement with Moncito that they scan, and that includes those inactive pages I was talking about, and includes those active pages, and it includes the ones that are hidden that the public can't easily navigate to. So it's scanning all sorts of pages, not just the ones that are active. And you'll see that it's come back, and we've worked since that time in December till now. We've been able to reduce the content with issues to 2,600 from 5,700. So you can make progress with this system in relatively short order, but it's important that it continues to run going forward, because keeping our site accessible and keeping content current and spelled correctly and links active is always going to be something that we have to attend to. So this gives you an idea of how we're starting to manage the site and how we're starting to maintain it to get more organization around it. The overarching goal we have with the site is less is more. Is we would like to get to a point with the advent of Schoology, with the advent of board docs, with YouTube, where we can take as much content as we can from our site and put it on third-party services that we know, because they deal with school districts, have a commitment to accessibility. So we know Schoology, we know board docs, they are built with accessibility in mind because their clients are school districts. So we know we don't have to worry about accessibility issues on board docs or on Schoology. So if we can move content to those sources, we no longer have to manage it on our site. And that also includes the users of our site. So we have 230 people currently who can at any time, they have restrictions. They can't alter the home pages, but at any time they can go into the site wherever they're permitted to go and add things to the site. Meaning that those could be additional misspellings, those could be additional broken links, those could be additional accessibility issues that they're not necessarily aware of they're creating because they don't have as much knowledge about website content creation, but they're creating them. So we also want to reduce the number of people that can get into our site. And we're doing that by moving teacher pages off the website entirely and having them live on Schoology. And that's the next phase of this website maintenance project, is to get from between now and the summer, where you'll see next year all those teacher pages that have many, in some cases have many PDFs which are inaccessible and many other issues. They'll no longer be on our site. All you'll see is a directory for these teachers of how to reach them in a phone number or an email or what room they're in. And if you're a student or a parent, you can go to Schoology to learn the inner workings of the class. So the syllabus, the projects that are due, etc. That's the hope, is that we can reduce the number of content editors to 5, 10, hopefully, over the course of maybe a couple of years. And if we have that as our focus, we can then look towards the future of our website if we want to do a redesign or a refresh, because industry standards is about every 4 years, 3 to 4 years for a refresh. We're on year 4 now. Our site was refreshed in February 2015. So if we want to look towards a refresh, bring it up to more modern standards, we can do that now and potentially move completely away from our current design, a drastic way if we want, because we'll have a reduced amount of site editors with more knowledge about how to operate a website, and we'll be able to maintain a more modernized, dynamic website if we have less people going into it and putting things in there that might, break it down. And then we also look at closed captioning, because that's another a big accessibility issue. We have to make sure all of our videos are closed captioned, and I have Nikki Crone working on different solutions, both paid and free, on closed captioning all of our meetings, closed captioning all of our original student productions. All the videos that we produce must be closed captioned. So that's a big undertaking as well. And that's where we are with the website currently and the maintenance of it. And I welcome any questions.
Great. Well, I'd love to hear from everybody, but let's start with our student, because I'd love to hear your reaction to some of the changes, since you're probably a website Schoology user.
Well, I use Schoology quite frequently. I'm always on. I have it on my phone also, so I can check everything that's on. So I think it's really helpful if you have the teacher pages on there, because it's kind of annoying to have to switch between Schoology and the web page in order to find things out, especially if I need to contact my teacher, because sometimes teachers don't. This is another thing. Sometimes teachers don't want to use Schoology to communicate with you. They want you to send them an email. And then sometimes a lot of them don't check their school emails. They only check their personal emails, and then they have to give you a personal email. So I like that, I don't know, they'll have things on Schoology, and so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So that's really good. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. There's an endorsement of your strategy right there. Julia, do you have anything?
No, except that you've come so far over the last few years, and I see this as just continual improvement, and I'm glad you have an eye for that. So thank you.
Yeah,
Chuck?
I'm very impressed. Very good.
Great. You have a vision and you're executing on it. So thank you for sharing that with us, and feel free to update us as you go along and do more things to help move us. Okay, then thank you for explaining the Apple imagery. I was struggling with that a little bit. Great, so that is that update. And at this point, I think if there's no new business, anybody have?
Well, the only new business that I have is I'll make an attempt to quickly go through a couple of questions now on my own. Are all board members in agreement? I can't speak for all board members, but I think we're going to have a discussion here about what we would like to see done. Maybe other boards can do that, other committees. I'm not sure what that goes. Do board members review the responses? I do not review the responses before they go out. We have a very highly qualified administration that reviews the questions and answers the questions. I don't feel it's my responsibility to do that, so I do not do that. I do watch the TV channels, but I don't monitor them. Okay? Let's see. And if there are questions that come up in the public that I feel I need a research answer for, I would follow it up and ask for a research answer to either Michael or whatever committee I'm on. If someone comes up with a question and I really don't feel I need it for my own benefit, then I'm not saying I'm not interested in it, but I'm saying it's not going to have an impact on a decision that I'm making based on a vote I'm going to take. So it would be just additional information for me that I don't see of a value for that particular vote that I'm taking. So that's just me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Madden. And with that, if there's no other new business, let's move into our final public comment quickly before the next meeting commences.
I would just like to thank Mr. Petiti for looking into the closed captioning bit, which I've been on for a while. And I would encourage you, if you find a way to do it, to let the township know as well, particularly the free ones. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Two things. One of the questions I asked was why were there no December 11th minutes published online? That seems like that's a question that could be easily answered at the meeting.
I think
I
we
miss
did
that?
answer that already.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed
You may not
it.
have heard that.
Yeah, Mrs. Calderoni said that the minutes were published online, just in the wrong place. That was a mistake that
Oh, okay.
happens from time to time.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
they were
I can
there,
appreciate
just
that.
hard to find.
And I guess my final comment is I attend a lot of meetings and I watch pretty carefully how people conduct themselves. And I would say that it's pretty rare that that I've really felt that a contributor to a meeting made a difference in the way the committee conducts itself, in any of the committees. In this case, the student representative has the ability to bring things forward a number of times that just were, I think, spot on. And I hope that people like this student representative consider being involved in government because they have the courage to speak up, speak truth to power, as they say. And when you're a student, you're not exactly high on the totem pole. as far as the committee goes. But in this case, we really have an exceptional participant, I think. So thank you.
I would beg to differ. I think the students are extraordinarily high up on the totem pole, with all due respect to fellow committee members, because we're all here for them. So.
Hi, Jeff
Hi.
Bajoukis, Boujoukos. One
Yeah.
question. Hi. I'm going quick because I know you want to get done.
Welcome.
On the website, there was a recent change, probably inadvertent, where the historical meeting minutes are no longer directly accessible pre the change over to board docs. So if you would take a look at that, there used to be just a straight link that would take you to the pretty tangled way that we maintained them in the past. That link's no longer there. So I just wanted to point that out so we could maybe take a look
Great,
at that.
thank you very much. Is there any other remaining public comment? Mrs. Spurtle, you coming?
Good job. Thank you very much. A lot of progress. Question on the cost of this Moncito. Does Moncito, the software, that's how the corrections are made? They go in and make the corrections on misspellings? It's all staff, people?
They provide us.
Your mic, Mr. Petiti.
On CETO, the company provides us a report every day or whenever we want to scan our site, and we are tasked with going in and making the corrections.
Okay. The cost of this software, was that brought up? Probably in a prior meeting. If it was,
It was approved
a while
in a
ago.
board meeting, I think, in September. I can look up the number for you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Madden, for answering the board questions that are unanswered. A very simple way to handle it might be, or would it be, that when there are blanks, the staff administration comes to the board and says, how do I answer these? I mean, you put out, you're publishing handwritten answers to all of the questions, and here are responses that are none. So if the other board members and committee members agree with Mr. Madden's response, that might be a way to communication between the two. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Spurtle. And if there's no other comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.